I'm Steph. Thanks for watching this video. I want to talk today about 3 books by Tana French that I recently finished. I've been listening to these as audiobooks. And the first of which was The Searcher, which I think is maybe one of her newer releases, so I've been reading them out of publication order, but that's okay. That's the first one of her books that I read, and maybe that's a good thing because I did like it a lot. So The Searcher is about an American named Cal Hooper who moves to a small Irish village to make a new start. He's a retired Chicago police officer, he's divorced, and he has a grown daughter who's going to college. And all Cal really wants to do is drink at the local pub, fix up the little cottage that he bought, and take long walks around the beautiful Irish countryside. That wouldn't make much of a mystery though, so of course something has to happen. So a local kid named Trey Reddy comes around and enlists his help. I'm going to spoil a plot point here because I want to use the right terminology. Cal at first thinks that Trey is a boy, but then he learns later that she's a girl. She just wears her brother's hand-me-down clothes and she keeps her hair short. And she's kind of rough and tumble. So Trey comes to Cal after hearing that he was a cop because her older brother Brendan, whom she was very attached to, had gone missing. And the Reddy family is rough and poor. The father took off some years before, and they have this reputation for being troublesome. So no one really takes them seriously when Brendan disappears. But Trey knows that something is wrong. And people, of course, try to convince Cal, as he starts kind of poking around, that Brendan must have just left like his dad did, and like so many young people do, to get out of the village. But Trey insists that that can't be what's happened. So Cal kind of tries to investigate without being too obvious. He's not a police officer anymore, and he's certainly not one in Ireland. But he kind of pokes around and he tries to investigate. And he and Trey form kind of an unusual friendship, especially because he doesn't realize she's a girl for a while. He teaches her how to shoot his rifle. They go out and shoot at rabbits, and she helps him with carpentry tasks around the village. He often feeds her, and she's frequently really hungry. Her mom has a hard time taking care of this bunch of kids that are still home. So, of course, Cal ultimately learns the truth of what happened to Brendan after, like, both he and Trey have been beaten up and threatened. And the truth is a little bit, is surprising, but it's a little bit of a letdown. I really did enjoy this book. I liked it the best of the 3 that of Tana French's novels that I've finished right now. The Searcher manages to illustrate the cruelty that can be found even in close-knit communities, especially toward the poor, as well as there is, some ambiguous morality going on in this story. People do what they do and they feel justified about it, although their choices aren't always what you might call good or right. And anyone is capable of anything. This is a slow-paced book. It takes its time. And I read a couple of reviews from people who didn't really have the patience for that, but I didn't mind. It's character-driven rather than really being plot-driven. And although that doesn't always work, in this case, I think it worked and I enjoyed it. I liked Cal. I liked Trey. I mostly liked the story. The setting makes me want to pack my bag and move to an Irish village. My only complaint really is that the end is just a little bit unsatisfying. I'm not going to tell you why because it'll spoil the ending. But I would be interested if you have read the book, whether you liked the ending and the resolution. Were you satisfied when we learned what happened to Brendan? So if you've read the book, maybe comment and tell me what you think about how it ends. Okay, so the second book I read by Tana French was The Witch Elm, which is another standalone book of hers and was apparently published 2 years prior to The Searcher, back in 2018. So The Witch Elm is about this happy-go-lucky lad named Toby Hennessy. He's easygoing and charming. He's had a pretty blissful life. He was raised by wealthy parents, and he made his way through college and into a career that he likes and is good at. He works as like a broker for an art gallery. Toby has lived a fairly easy life until one night his apartment is broken into and some burglars give him a vicious beating, leaving him for dead. And he does recover, but his head especially was beaten quite a bit, so he has some memory loss, maybe what you would call some mild brain damage. His recovery is long and slow and kind of depressing. And when his family discovers that Toby's uncle Hugo is dying of an inoperable brain tumor, Toby and his girlfriend go to stay with Hugo at the big family home, which is affectionately called the Ivy House because it's covered in ivy. Toby's large family is around a lot, especially his cousins Leon and Susanna, who are close in age to him, and they spent summers together growing up at the Ivy House. And the three of them grew up basically like siblings, even though none of them are siblings. They each are from different parents. They were very, very close as children, but then by secondary school, which we would call high school in the U.S., Leon's homosexuality had made him kind of a target for bullying, while Toby just blissfully floated along in his happy little world where he had all his good luck and his loyal pals. And so they had different experiences from that point forward. About halfway through the book, the mystery begins when a human skull, is discovered in the old Witch Elm at the Ivy House, followed by the rest of the body of a young man, which is also tucked down in the tree. And it turns out that the body had belonged to one of Toby and his cousin's former classmates named Dominic. And everyone thought that Dominic had killed himself by jumping off a cliff many years earlier when the kids had just finished school. So clues are gathered and the mystery is unraveled, and Toby frequently wonders if he's to blame for the murder, and his cousins even seem to kind of encourage him to think this, in spite of knowing that his mind is kind of broken and he doesn't really remember things clearly. Dominic, it turns out, was a terrible bully, kind of an awful person, and there are plenty of motives for his murder. So this story is also a slow burn, and it does take a while to even get to the mystery. And then the reader is kind of constantly misled by Toby's faulty memory. Neither he nor the reader knows what's true. He's like a very unreliable narrator, and his cousins aren't much better because they're a little bit crazy and they have their own motives for doing things and saying things and planting seeds of, ideas and stuff. So the last section of the book, after the mystery is solved, includes a shocking event in which Toby seems to basically lose his mind. It's disturbing, and honestly, I felt like it was a little disjointed from the rest of the book. The event that happens, I feel like it doesn't really belong with the rest of the story. I think it should have been cut. I'm not going to spoil it. If you're going to read the book, you'll know what I mean when you get to it. It's a big event, and it changes everything for Toby yet again. I liked this book, not as much as The Searcher, but it was compelling. I think, and it was good enough that I decided to go back in time to read Tana French's first Dublin Murder Squad book, which is called In the Woods. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. In the Woods was published way back in 2007, and I think it might be her first book, as well as the first in her Dublin Murder Squad series. The book is narrated by Detective Rob Ryan. He's the one telling the story. And the book opens with a scene of Ryan as a child, when he was known as Adam Ryan. That was his first name. And he's found in the woods near his home in Knocknarea with the back of his shirt torn and his shoes full of blood and his two little best friends missing. And he has no memory of what's happened, and the other two children never reappear. So we flash forward many years, and Ryan had grown up attending boarding school in England, so he managed to shed his Irish accent and his first name before returning to Ireland and becoming a member of the murder squad with the Dublin police. So he keeps his true identity a secret from almost everyone in his life. Like, everyone knows the story of the kids at Knocknarea, but not everyone knows that he was that little boy that survived. So he had like no memory of what had happened, like at all, like nothing. This little traumatized boy never was able to tell what happened to his friends or what happened to him that day. So Ryan is an interesting character, and I did not find him likable at all. And I know your protagonist doesn't have to be likable, but it does make for more pleasant reading if they are. So he and his partner, Cassie Maddox, are very close. They're like best friends. And they end up assigned a case of the murder of a 12-year-old girl over in Knocknarea. The site of the murder is an archaeological dig that is rushing to be completed before a motorway destroys the site. The woods aren't quite what they were back when Ryan originally had lived there. Some of it's already been taken down for roadways and things. And a lot of time is spent in the book talking about the girl who was soon to leave to join a prestigious ballet school. She's a very talented girl. So there is some police procedural stuff, and I like that. That's always interesting. And the crime is eventually solved by Ryan and Maddox and their team. And the murder of the little girl and the solving of that crime is really secondary to Rob Ryan's personal drama, which, in my opinion, got old really fast. I wanted to like this book more than I did. It was okay. It wasn't a terrible read, but Ryan is so self-destructive and self-centered that he was not super enjoyable to read, and especially since he was the one telling the story. He kept circling back to his own stuff, and he didn't even seem to want to do his job half the time. He was just really an annoying character. Cassie is a more interesting character, and the next book in the series focuses on her. So I'm going to give that one a read and see if maybe I like that one better. But one big disappointment to me, and maybe this is a spoiler, is that we never learn the solution to the mystery of what happened when Adam Rob Ryan was a child. We never find out where his friends went, why he had blood in his shoes. We never learn. His memories don't come back, and they don't find any clues in the current investigation that help them resolve that story. And honestly, that was the story I was more interested in. I felt kind of cheated that I stuck it out with a character I didn't like narrating this long book, only to be left hanging on the one thing that I was actually interested in learning. So I would probably not heartily recommend this book, but it was okay overall. She does quite a bit, of character storytelling rather than storytelling, and sometimes it works and sometimes maybe it just doesn't work as well. I mean, good for her. This was her first novel, and I think that's great. Good for her for getting it published, and it's a decent enough book that people kept reading, and she has managed to keep publishing books. I'm hoping that the next book is more to my taste. It looks like the Dublin Murder Squad series features a different leading character in each book. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but that's what it looks like as I was kind of skimming through the titles and the summaries. So that might mean that each book can stand alone, which would also be a good thing. So those are my thoughts on my first 3 Tana French books that I've read. Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, click like. I appreciate it. If you want to support my channel, click subscribe and all the YouTube stuff. I can't wait to hear from you. So I'll see you next time.